Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Hash. It's Friday, and we got the 3 box going. We got Naomi
Yeah, we
Brockwell.
really are large on here.
We are large.
Yeah.
David Morris in the middle, and me, Jennifer Sanasi. Naomi, I think you have the first story. The world is still, I think, in shock over what's happening in the Ukraine right now, and your story has to do with that situation. So take it away.
Yeah, so bringing this back to what's going on in the crypto world there. So Flexpool, which is the world's 5th largest Ethereum mining pool, became possibly the first of its kind to cut services to Russian users following the country's invasion of the Ukraine. They said that the move was taken to show solidarity with Ukraine. I think this is kind of a crazy move, to be honest. You have a service that is banning Russian users as if the Russian people were responsible for the invasion of Ukraine. I mean, we have these political leaders, we have a war of egos going on, and the people end up all being collateral, right? And so I think it is kind of crazy to punish the users of a platform because they happen to have a leader who wants to invade another country. But I don't know whether you guys have another take on that. David, I'll throw it to you.
Yeah, I have a slightly different take, although I certainly agree with your assessment that, Russians as a whole seem to be really showing their opposition to this move. And it's important to keep in mind that they effectively did not choose Vladimir Putin as their leader. But that being said, my take is more along the lines of, mining pools are services being run by entities that have their own market forces to contend with. And maybe they see this as a competitive advantage of some sort to signal that, for people who themselves don't want to contribute or participate in Russian activities, this is a venue for them now. To be clear, this is separate from the operation of the Ethereum network or other crypto networks, right? This is a service built on top of it. So it's not as if Ethereum is being censored. It's a sort of aggregator service that is choosing to exclude some users. Obviously not in a theoretical way aligned with the total uncensorability and openness that crypto networks advertise. But to be clear, this is not the network itself. This is an additive service. Jen, what do you think?
Yeah, I want to read this quote from the statement. They said, "We generally do not get involved in politics despite our personal views as a company. However, this is greater than politics, greater than anyone. This is a war that may end the world. It certainly is ending the lives of many innocent people in Eastern Europe." And so I think as a business decision, given the crypto ethos and thinking about the situation that's going on there, I think it was probably very hard to make this decision. I can empathize with it. We, especially on this show, we are all very adamantly behind the ethos of crypto. But I think when we see what's going on and we hear there's very human stories coming out of Ukraine and Russia, I can empathize with the statement. And there's Steve. And so I really don't. I'm kind of conflicted this morning. I don't know how to feel about it, but I think I am still, even myself, recovering from the very human element of seeing all the stories that are coming out of that part of the world. But Naomi,
if I could add one more thought.
Yeah, sure.
It's also worth keeping in mind that sanctions are coming down on Russia fast and furious from every direction. Banks are being cut off from international payments. So there may also be a sort of strategic regulatory element here. If a mining pool was found to be transacting with Russians in the midst of this, they could attract unwanted regulatory attention from the international community. So that might be a factor here as well. So just something to think about.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, David. I think that's probably, although they say otherwise in the post, that may be one of the guiding reasons for this move, because if you have businesses that are interacting with Russia, then they are going to be hurt as a result because regulations don't allow it at the moment. Yeah, it is interesting. I wonder whether this is going to be the first of many such moves as we start to see Russia get more and more isolated in the global economy. I'm just seeing videos of Russians protesting in the streets saying they don't want to go to war. I'm seeing videos of Ukrainians who are told they're not allowed to flee their country because they're being forced to stay and fight if they're a man between the ages of I think it's 18 and 60, and on both sides, it's absolute atrocity. And for what? Like, I mean, I'm a real pacifist myself, and we won't turn this into like a big, discussion about war in general, but it is just really heartbreaking to see the people in both countries get hurt as the result of what is probably the hubris and ego of the leaders at the top of it. But I don't know. Any final thoughts there, Jen or David? No.
I mean, I think this is a great time to just transition into our next story about the same part of the world. I think David has that story.
Yeah, the same part of the world, and I think a useful illustration and contrast. So we have a large amount of Bitcoin, I think over $700,000 when we were reporting, which has probably gone up by now, that is nominally going to aid Ukraine's military, which, to be clear, Ukraine, a large country, but certainly smaller and less well defended than Russia, and now the target of aggression. There are a few things to note about this. First of all, again, to mark the difference between the networks and services built on top of them, this, to my understanding, is a native Bitcoin wallet that is collecting donations. So it's really sort of impossible to stop those from moving around on Bitcoin, in contrast to the ability of a centralized aggregator to cut off Ethereum mining access. The second thing, and I don't know whether there have been updates on this story, but there is some uncertainty about exactly where that money is going, and I think that's an important thing. We see some fundraisers being mounted by known entities. There is a newspaper in Kiev that is raising funds, and so I think it's important to keep in mind that even though these networks are open, reputation matters when you're somebody who's trying to raise funds for a specific purpose, so that people can be certain that their money is actually, going where it says it is. So Jen, I saw your hand. You want to jump on here?
Yeah, I wanted to touch on the Patreon angle of this story. So before we had people donating to this Bitcoin wallet, they were donating via Patreon, which is a platform where people can donate funds. It's like GoFundMe, but there's also creators who publish content on the platform, and they can get donations. And that was shut down by the platform because the terms and conditions say that funding for any military or war is prohibited. And this brought me back, while the situation was definitely not as severe or dire, to the situation in Canada with GoFundMe and the truckers. And I think that everything that's going on in the world, and this probably started in 2020 with the pandemic, is really forcing people to open their eyes and look at what's going on. And it's really, really hitting people at home. I think before this, even if someone were to say last week to look at the terms and conditions, they would say, well, that makes sense. Why would you want to fund a military or terrorist organization? Those are the bad guys. And I think in this situation, we're seeing it's not always the bad guys, and the bad guys can be defined in a lot of different ways. And so I think that this is, teaching a lot of people a lot of really valuable lessons in a really horrible way. And I just have one more point to add. During the pandemic, when India was raising crypto funds for relief, there was a problem with off-ramping the crypto and actually getting it to the people who needed it. And so I don't know, David, if you have any insight as to how this Bitcoin is going to actually be turned into cash to get it to people who need it the most, or do we know anything about that?
I think we can get to that, but Naomi might have had a point before.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to talk about what you were saying, Jen. Other way, it's so confusing.
It's hard.
What you were saying
boxes.
About Patreon. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think right now across the globe, as you mentioned, and it started probably 2020, we're seeing the best advertisements for decentralized money that could possibly exist. I mean, we've got war, we've got inflation, we've got payment blockades, we've got all these things that would push people towards a system that isn't controlled by an elite few, something that allows people to have full ownership over their money and not have to ask permission in order to send it to someone else or access it. And it's just so important that we have these lessons, and it's so sad, right? I mean, I wish that it didn't take people being personally affected by this or seeing, real use cases right before their eyes start to unfold for them to start to see the value. But unfortunately, I mean, human beings have a lot of trouble, like seeing far off use cases for things that don't immediately touch their lives. But right now, I mean, Ukraine news is everywhere in our feeds, in the news cycle, wherever we look. And so it's hard to not be touched by the stories that are coming out of there. I mean, Canada, again, just across the border, you see these use cases. And so you're absolutely right that I think that what we're seeing is just the value proposition of Bitcoin and decentralized money really in the limelight at the moment, because for so long, it's just been speculative cycles. It's been people saying NFTs are kind of cool. It's been people saying, I wonder if we're going to get to 100,000, debating with people saying it's going to go to zero. And at the end of the day, that market speculation is a tiny fraction of the promise of Bitcoin, which ultimately is the ability to have uncensorable money. And so now that people are starting to see the real value, I'm very interested to see how the space evolves, whether it keeps evolving towards these more speculative use cases, or whether people start to build out the infrastructure that's needed for a truly robust economy that can't be shut down by any particular government, because that's really the direction we want to be going in with all of this. But David, I'll throw it back to you for your thoughts.
Yeah. So to answer kind of two different things. First of all, Jen, to your point about off-ramping, I don't have a lot of detailed insight into how, for example, Ukrainian exchanges are dealing with things right now. Importantly, they are not facing any cutoff from global finance. So, if they need dollars, they still have access to that. But I think one important thing to keep in mind is that this is a situation where you wouldn't necessarily need off-ramping. I mean, we have a robust international market for Bitcoin that sets a price that can be used anywhere, whether or not you're actually selling it for that price or not. And so especially in a situation like what's going on in Ukraine right now, you can absolutely imagine people simply transacting in Bitcoin for major purchases or relief funds or anything like that. So I think that's an interesting and important thing to keep in mind. Second point, just to follow up on what Naomi said about the kind of awakening that's happening right now, I think it is good, but I think it's important also, and some people have made this point, it is notable that the Canadian truckers and the attacks on Ukraine have been such a catalyst when very similar things have been happening across the world to different populations. I would point out mostly non-white populations for years, and people have not been attentive to those problems. So I just think that's something that bears reflection from many people who are suddenly realizing Bitcoin is important because it's useful to white people. Naomi, you have a final comment, and then I believe we're going to a break.
Yeah, and I wouldn't begrudge people for only identifying with things that are close to their own lives. I think it's a very human trait. But the people who have been crypto advocates have definitely been pushing this overarching use case since the very beginning. This is why we got involved, because we thought it could help a tremendous amount of people. And it's great, honestly, that people are starting to wake up to that. However, they've been catalyzed, getting into this. And when you're talking about, David, like the ability for us to just be able to send crypto to each other rather than have to off-ramp, I mean, this could really be a turning point in that, because up until now we are looking for these off-ramps, moving it back into the traditional financial payment rails that can be censored and seized. And now maybe people will start to make that transition and say, maybe we keep it in this money, maybe we transact in this money. It could be a real turning point for crypto. But let's go to a tease now. And when we come back, we're going to be looking at what's going on in El Salvador. Apparently, Bitcoin is being put to some good use there. So coming up after the break.
Hi, I'm Christine Lee.
Zach Seward.
I'm Michael Casey.
I'm Christy Harkin.
I'm Isaiah Jackson.
I'm Serena Lynn.
Hey, this is Will Foxley.
I'm Teresa Santos.
Hi, I'm Lawrence Lewitton.
Hi, I'm Doreen Wayne.
I'm Nicholas Day.
Hi, I'm Kevin Worth.
My name is Naomi Brockwell.
I'm Jordan Muthra.
Hi, I'm Galen Moore.
Hi, I'm Brad Count.
I'm Pete Paschal.
Hi, I'm Jen Sanasi.
You're watching. And you are watching.
And you're watching CoinDesk TV.
Hello and welcome back to The Hash, where we bring you the latest and greatest in crypto and culture. So another NFT fail. It seems like we're getting these NFT fail stories every day lately. So Sacramento Kings guard De'Aaron Fox shut his NFT project down suddenly and addressed the controversy on Twitter yesterday. He said, the project launch was ill-timed. I delegated certain aspects to the launch of an NFT in an attempt to partner with professionals. We weren't happy with the execution and demand on my time. So the project launched in January and generated $1.5 million in investment. And then it was just deleted from the internet. People haven't gotten their money back, and they're not really sure what's going to happen with the project. He's saying that they're going to revisit the project at a later time when he has more time. But I think this really points to these celebrities and athletes who want to get into NFTs. They're seeing a lot of people make money from NFTs, but they're not realizing the work that goes into creating a brand around this NFT, delivering on your promises. A lot of the promises have to do with building out applications and use cases in the metaverse, building out play-to-earn games, building out ways for people. So this project, for example, had prizes like people could win NBA All-Star Game tickets. There was going to be metaverse basketball. There were going to be all these things. And I think that these celebrities and athletes see it working and don't realize the work that goes into it. And then they just fall to the side, and their fans and the people who invested in them are the ones who lose. I don't know if I saw any hands go up, but David, I saw you nodding away there. So what was your take on this story?
Yeah, a couple of things, but I think the biggest one is just, it seems like even if you're a millionaire NBA player, you can't hire Solidity devs. I'm guessing this is an Ethereum project, but I just came back from ETH Denver, and the demand for people who know how to code contracts on Ethereum is insane. So I can only assume his reference to trying to hire a professional team is really telling. It really sounds like he hired some people who could not execute. And I think there's a lot of that probably out there because of the lack of available talent and coders in particular. But even, simple stuff like NFTs does require a level of understanding that is not widespread. I mean, just in general, the growth of the sector is outpacing the availability of workers on every single front. I mean, that includes journalists. So, message to people out there, if you're interested in getting involved in this stuff, you are needed. So that's important. And I also would just say I kind of feel bad for him because obviously this one failed allegedly for practical reasons, but there are also a lot of scams going on. There are exit scams and rugs going on. And when you have like an honest failure, if that's what this actually is, you then get lumped in with that. The only remaining problem is he doesn't seem to have promised anybody a refund, even after shutting down the thing. So that's really questionable. So maybe he's rightly being lumped in. For what it's worth, I looked up his salary. His annual salary is about $6 or $7 million. So even for an NBA player, NFTs are good money, which is interesting. Naomi, did you want to chime in?
Yeah, I mean, I think that whole part about not returning the money is, it's very strange to raise like $1.7 million in a project, have all these people buy something, and then to just delete it from the internet with no warning and no announcement about how these people will be paid back. That's really dodgy. I will agree with you, David, and everything that you said. I think that right now we have so much buzz around marketing and people trying to sell these new products and, get all the hype without realizing that, like, where is the underlying product underneath all of the marketing? Because if you have no Solidity developers who are actually building out these contracts and making it work, then you don't have anything but hype. And that really says a lot about the space right now, because you're right. It's not just even in the crypto space. Developers are really hard to hire right now. You ask any tech company about hiring and they cannot find people. If you're looking for a job out there, learn to code, people, because there are so many jobs. There are people desperate to hire you. So it's sad when our minds and our marketing and all of this running too far ahead of the actual substantive skill set needed to produce these products. Our imagination's getting carried away and we're not actually able to create the things that we want. But we will get there. It's just not going to be at the pace that we've seen this NFT marketplace move, which is an astronomical pace. But Jen, I'll throw it back to you.
Yeah, I couldn't find the mint price for these NFTs because everything was deleted. But he offered in the Discord channel people who purchased between 5 and 9 NFTs a signed jersey, which is valued up to $145, while the floor price is now 0.003 ETH, which is a 96% loss in value. And I just wonder, I mean, if he had good intentions, I wonder if they just deleted everything from the internet because of the huge volume of scams in the space. I wonder if they were like, let's just get rid of everything. We don't want to be called scammers and we'll deal with it. I don't think it was the right move, but I'm just trying to get into the head of these people. Like, why delete everything and not offer the money back? And I just can't make sense of it. I don't know, Naomi, if you have anything to add.
I mean, I have the exact same question, and I'm wondering, you still have the NFT at the end of it. So why can't you just kind of keep that around until you can build out a team and make it work? And then he's saying, we weren't happy with the execution and demand on my time and attention during the NBA season. I totally get that. I mean, it seems like someone who just spread themselves too thin and couldn't keep up. But he has a responsibility. He did create this project. People bought it. Now they've lost a tremendous amount of money. So, I mean, I agree with you, Jen. A smarter play might have been to keep it around and then see what they could grow out of this, so people could at least retain some value of their actual NFT. But let's change track here. And Jen, I believe you have the next story. We're talking about what's going on in El Salvador.
Yeah, we're going off to El Salvador. So El Salvador's President Nayib Bukele announced that the inauguration of a new pet hospital is happening. So funding for the hospital was made possible by a surplus in a government trust fund related to the rising value of Bitcoin. So we first heard of this trust in October. There is a surplus allegedly of $4 million that have been put towards this pet hospital. And Bitcoin Magazine reported that all services at the pet hospital will be 25 cents in value if you pay in Bitcoin. And so I have a few different questions, and some things were highlighted in the article about where this surplus would come from if El Salvador hasn't actually reported any sale in Bitcoin. And so, David, I'm gonna toss it off to you for initial thoughts, and then we'll get into whether or not they would have had to sell Bitcoin to get this.
Yeah, based on what I read in the story from the block, it did seem like the finance minister acknowledged that this might have been dividends from trading, which, it's a sovereign country. I guess they can do what they want, but I find it a little bit sketchy that this is a major factor in the Wiz Bitcoin project, because of course there's a huge amount of risk in trading in crypto, and this is fundamentally the El Salvadoran people's money. And the second thing that I think, from a kind of marketing perspective, if you're a Bitcoin advocate, you kind of have to look at this and wonder if it's really the best for getting Salvadorans on the side of this project, because we're talking about $4 million in a very poor country. And it's going to a pet hospital in the biggest city in the country. So that's, I think, maybe not strategically the best move by Bukele in terms of deploying these funds. If you're trying to, be an advertisement for Bitcoin, go out there and help people who badly need it in some cases. More power to them if they're making money trading. That's going well, but there is a great deal of risk to the people's money here, and I think there's a lot of thought that needs to go into how to deploy it. I guess I will pass it along to Naomi.
Yeah, I think that am seeing El Salvador make some questionable economic decisions. I love that they're getting into Bitcoin. That's great as a way of safeguarding wealth, but then they go into debt with China in order to build a giant stadium. And then, they decide they're going to build this hospital from all the surplus. Like what surplus if they're in debt with China for building this giant stadium? I mean, there are a lot of questions there. Why are they spending money that this incredibly poor nation really can't afford to spend when, if they are collecting money, spend it on helping the people there directly. I mean, animal hospitals are nice. If you were to ask the people themselves what their preference would be for, spending that money, they might have a different answer, which is why I disagree with, expropriating wealth in the first place and aggregating it on mass and dispersing it according to what some people want. I mean, spending that money according to one's own value system is important. And I do question the government making these calls and spending what they're calling a surplus. It's a little bit of a sneaky way to phrase it. There's no surplus. They're in a tremendous amount of debt right now. So there's definitely spending money that they don't have. But David, I'll throw it back to you.
I guess I don't have a ton else to say about this. I think that it's one of those things where this exists, right? Like El Salvador is doing this. They are, again, a sovereign country and can do whatever they want. And I think that one point to take away here is that if you're a Bitcoin advocate, you can be in favor of Bitcoin or whatever system without approving of everything that is being done with it, even by this country that has become kind of a totem for big time adoption. You can still be pro Bitcoin and be critical of a country like El Salvador and what they're doing here. Jen, you wanted to chime in.
Yeah, I guess the skeptic in me wants to know more about this pet hospital, who's running it, who's building it, who's working there, because it does really seem like a weird decision in a country as poor as El Salvador, like you both mentioned, to put this surplus of money towards a pet hospital. So I would really love to see the hands that this money is flowing
That's
through.
Some solid skepticism.
We might uncover something there, but that's for another day.
Yeah, I will say, I think pet hospitals are great. If I personally were asked, do I want to contribute money to a pet hospital, I'd probably personally say yes. It's just a matter of whether or not you're going to force an entire population's tax dollars to go towards the things that you personally believe in, at the point of a gun. So that's a question for another day, and I'm not going to go into a rant. So let's...
I think Steve would like the pet hospital.
He weighed in.
I think Steve would love
it. There.
Steve would really like it.
He's off doing something. He's staring out the window right now.
Yeah, he's thinking of all the possibilities, all the treats that could be bought for him with that money. But let's wrap it up there. This was a wonderful 3-show to end out a crazy, crazy week. Keep track of what's going on CoinDesk.com for all of the breaking news going on, what's happening in Ukraine, etc. And stick around because we do have All About Bitcoin at 3 o'clock. And then you're going to have a great weekend. We'll be back here at 12 on Monday for another The Hash, as we are every single day, weekday at 12. But have a great weekend, everyone. We'll see you later.
Thanks, everybody.